The next type of tricky equation we're going to look at is when there is a fractional coefficient of x. So when we're dealing something like 3/4 of x or -2/5 of x. Sometimes these look trickier because there are fractions involved and we're a little bit afraid of fractions, but we can handle this. Earlier in the year, we learned about fractional division. So if I gave you a problem like 7 divided by 1/2, we would think about this instead of a division problem as really a multiplication problem, where we would keep, change, and flip, keep our 7, change division to multiply, and flip around the fraction to come up with our answer. So it would become 14. We called this method keep, change, flip for a while, but then I started talking about it as multiplying by the reciprocal. So if I had a problem like 4 divided by 2/3, we would say, okay, we're going to keep the 4, but we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, 3/2. And that's how we'd simplify this expression. Well, in our work today, we're going to be coming up with fractional coefficients of x. So what's going to happen is that we're going to need to take some term and end up dividing it by a fraction. So if my coefficient of x was 3/4 of x, at some point I would have to divide through by 3/4. But I don't want us to think about this as dividing by 3/4. I want to think about this as multiplying by that reciprocal. And we'll notice when this happens, so many things are going to cancel out. We know that this is all multiplying, so I can multiply both of the number parts together here, and the 4 will actually cancel out with that 4, and this 3 will actually cancel out with this 3, and I'm just going to be left when I'm done with an x, with 1x. And so this is going to be the trick we're going to keep in mind as we look at our next couple equations. So here we have equations 3 and 4 on your paper, and we're going to go through and solve using this idea. So they're all set up and ready for me. I'm going to drop that line down from my equal sign, and I'm going to figure out what's happening to x. X is getting multiplied by 2/3 and added with 5. So I know that I'll do the opposite. I will divide by 2/3 and I will subtract 5. I'll do the subtraction before the division, so I'm just going to get that step out of the way. Those cancel out, and I'm left with 2/3 of x balancing with 4. That one's done, and now I need to do this dividing by 2/3. At the beginning of this video, I said that dividing by 2/3 is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So instead of dividing by 2/3 in my work, I'm going to show multiplying by 3/2, its reciprocal. On both sides of my equation, I'll multiply by 3/2. When I do that, I get some fraction work to do. I'll put my 4/1 and I'll simplify. So 2 goes into 2 once and 2 goes into 4 twice, and 2 times 3/1. So 6 is going to balance with my fraction work over here. Oh, the 2 and the 2 cancel. Awesome. The 3 and the 3 cancel. Awesome. I'm just left with x. So our key here is we're always going to multiply by the reciprocal instead of dividing by that coefficient. So maybe you think that trick is wild, so let's just check and make sure it worked out. So down here at the bottom, I'll set up that check. 2/3 of some number plus 5 is 9. I think my number is 6. So I'll go through and do that work. I'll put 6 over 1. 3 goes into 3 once, 6 goes in twice. I get 2 times 2 is 4. Plus 5 is 9, which is true. So this trick is super helpful. Let's look at this with another example. Heading over to problem number 4. Again, I'm set up, I'm ready to go. I'm gonna drop down that equal sign. 3/4 of x minus 6 equals 6. I'll identify my operations over here. So I am subtracting 6 and multiplying by 3/4, which will turn into adding 6 and dividing by 3/4. Gonna get that first step done out of the way. So I'll add 6 to both sides. On this side, the 6's cancel each other out, and I'm just left with 3/4 of x. On this side, I have 12. But I still have to do my second step. So I look at how my second step was gonna be dividing through by 3/4. And when I'm dividing through by a fraction, I know that that's difficult, but in that process, I have to multiply by the reciprocal. So I will flip that fraction upside down, and instead of dividing by this fraction, I'm actually gonna do this in my work. On both sides of my equation, I'm gonna work through that. So I'll take 12, I'll multiply by that reciprocal 4/3. When I do this, I just want to be left with x. I'm trying to undo what's happening to x. And this trick works because the 3's cancel out and the 4's cancel out, and I'm left with 1x. Since I did it on this side, I also do it over here. And so I'll think about my fraction work. Well, 3 goes into 3 once, it goes into 12 4 times, and 4 times 4 is 16. Going down, I'm gonna check this out just to make sure I'm getting that correct answer. This is a pretty crazy trick. But I'll take 3/4 and multiply it by my 16, subtract 6 from it, and I hope to get 6. So let's see, I put 16 over 1, and then I can simplify the 4 and the 16, and I end up with 12 minus 6 equals 6, and that's true. So this fractional coefficient trick is tricky, but it really does help us to simplify expressions like this. So I want us to remember, multiply by the reciprocal, and write that on your page another 5 times so that you remember it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon with another trick.